Hello, I'm JoAnn Higginbotham, Professor of Education at Lee University, and I'd like to speak to you for the next few minutes about your effective questioning and asking students effective questions. May I ask, as a teacher, think about the questions that you ask your students. Are they challenging? Do you ask them questions that make them want to take risks later on? Do your questions encourage them to listen and to respond, to give an opinion? Just think about questions that you ask and how you ask them. How long do you wait for a student to respond? Do you call on the student first, or do you ask the question first? So we're going to talk about a few of these things. Benjamin Bloom was an educator who, with some other educators, came up with a taxonomy or a categorization of the different levels of questions that we ask, or the different levels of knowledge when we are thinking through text and when we're asking questions. So he came up with levels that at the very basic level are the knowledge questions. And these are questions that just require maybe one-word answers, a sentence. It's pretty much recognition and recall. Going up if you want to call it a pyramid, the next question or level would be comprehension. And I'll explain this one a little bit more in a second. Then after that, you have application, then analysis, then synthesis, and then evaluation. As I mentioned, at the knowledge level, it's very simple. The question might be, or the statement, list the planets in the order from their smallest to the largest. That would be considered a knowledge level. At the comprehension level, the student really needs to understand the main idea about the topic. For example, the question might be, can you describe one of the planets in terms of physical characteristics? And then they would have to change the information that they have into a different symbolic form. At the analysis level, which is a higher level in Bloom's taxonomy, the student needs to be able to take apart the information, to analyze it, and take the knowledge that they have gained and be able to break it into smaller elements, and then help these elements work together to form the larger part of what they are being asked to do. So the question might be, compare and contrast the planets in some way. You're using different words for how you frame that question. Then when they move to the synthesis level, which is higher still, they have to be more creative at this level. Here they have to think about designing something new or using maybe even art to express the answer. Perhaps the teacher might ask, imagine and describe a guided tour through one of the planets. So they would have to take what they know about the planets, and then they would have to imagine what it might be like to actually take someone on a tour through that planet. At the evaluation level, which is the highest level of Bloom's taxonomy, you're asking the student to give a judgment or opinion on the question. You might ask a question such as, do you think the government is justified in spending federal money on space exploration? Why or why not? So they would have to support that with their opinion, but also with knowledge that was from a standard base that they had factual knowledge concerning that. Then I'm going to take you through, looking at this, some of the wording that you would use on asking particular questions. Going back to the knowledge questions, words such as who, what, when, where, and how are the kinds of words you would use asking those questions, and that's getting at just the very basic recognition knowledge. When we go to the application level of questioning, you might ask, how is something an example of something else? Or how is this related to that? Or why is this particular thing from the material significant? That would be an application type question that the student would have to ask and answer at a little bit higher level. And then you go to the synthesis level, where they're having to combine ideas to form a new whole. Questions such as, what would you predict or infer from this or that? What ideas can you add to? How would you create or infer from something? How would you design a new model of this? Or how would you, what solution would you suggest for this or that? Analysis, asking students to, analysis type questions would be, what are the parts of this feature or features of this particular, maybe it's of a planet, say. Classify the planets according to outline or diagram or form a web design of something. This way the students have to analyze and to think about it. And I actually put the synthesis before this, the analysis comes before the synthesis. And then the final top level evaluative. The students would have a standard from which they would make a judgment. And they would have to form an opinion. And you would ask, do you agree with this? What is your opinion on this? What is the most important thing about this? Prioritize this. Those are the kinds of words you might use. But students would need to be able to support or document any of the opinions that they made. So these are keywords that go with this type of questioning. Another important aspect of questioning is think time. In the past, teachers have not always been the best at giving students time enough to think about the question. Or they may say, Johnny, would you answer this question? And then Johnny's already scared because he knows he's going to be asked a question. Rather, ask the question, give them time to think about it, and the wait time should be 7 to 10 seconds. That might seem like a long time at first, especially since you may have been only giving 1 to 3 seconds for them to think about it, but give them a longer time to think about it. That way, those who don't process immediately or quickly or have to think about things, they're able to answer it given the time. So pose the question first rather than calling on someone. And then allow the think time of 7 to 10 seconds. They may write during this time and formulate their thoughts, and then they would be more ready to answer. Another technique is to make sure that you give all students the opportunity to respond rather than relying on volunteers or certainly not calling on the same students all the time who might raise their hand. Tell them that you're going to call on, you're glad that they know the answer, but you're going to call on different ones. And so you can keep a track, you can create a system where you can keep track of who you call on. And then hold them accountable for answering. Do not take no for an answer. You can say, you may pass and I will come back to you and we will think about it. But make sure that at some point they do answer. If a student gives an incorrect answer, do not embarrass them over their incorrect answer. Give something positive for them to, we call this risk-taking. When a student answers a question wrong and is said, no, that is not right, or you give them a very poignant, that is not the correct answer, then they don't want to answer questions anymore. They don't want to take the risk of being embarrassed in front of the class again. So make sure that they understand that even though the question was not correct, you appreciate their effort and you will help them find the correct answer. The next strategy is write time, W-R-I-T-E. It is especially helpful for students who learn better through their kinesthetic senses. And it's not necessarily that writing specifically helps the learning, but what it does, it's an active process. And it helps them to be active. They're using their bodies, they're using their hands to write, and it clarifies things for them. It can clarify perspectives. So writing is very important. Talking is also important. Students love to talk. So if you have to talk, you have to think. So they are thinking while they are talking. It's very important for students to be able to talk and discuss in the school setting, in their classroom setting. This can be done with partners, with 3 in a group. You can give them prompts and parameters and guide their discussion, but it's very important that they talk. I'd like to end with a quote, and the quote is from Rashedi and Shireen. The ability to think, to be a lifelong seeker and integrator of new knowledge, is based on the ability to ask and consider important questions. I hope you have a wonderful time of questioning your students and that they are very effective questions. Thank you.